Welcome to Goodwood, from Monterey to West Sussex, back in time as well. Dario, you've been here before. Just talk us through the magic of this iconic event.
Well, yesterday morning we were driving in and I said, right, Jimmy, we're going back in time, right? As we sort of cross the threshold of the circuit, you go into this sort of fantasy land where everything is, decades old. And yeah, that's just the sort of the visual of it. And then you get on track, and we've all had some pretty incredible experiences this weekend so far, driving these great cars. Pretty intense racing, but it's just magical, isn't it? I mean, you've been here before. It's just the most incredible place, and not only do we all get into it, but everybody that comes to watch gets into it too.
Now, Scott, Jimmy, you've not been here before. Is it everything that you thought it was going to be and more?
I've been to the event before. I've never actually driven in it, but it's always a little bit difficult schedule-wise. It's something I've wanted to do for forever, but I just love the passion that everybody puts into it, and everybody, it's one of the happiest places I see too. Sometimes you go to Disney, which is meant to be the happiest place on earth. Everybody looks miserable, but this place, everybody's happy. They're into the theme, and it's so cool, man. Just the effort that everyone puts in.
And your first time on track yesterday.
It was
Tell
amazing.
us what you're in and.
I'm driving a Ford Galaxy and then a Cobra, and the Galaxy practice session was first, and on the cool-down lap on the way in, I just really slowed down and looked around, and I swear I went back into the 60s, and as Scott just mentioned, the effort all the fans put in, as you're looking around and you see old warplanes flying and driving this 60s Galaxy down the road. It's been incredible so far.
So as I said, from Monterey to West Sussex, I've got to go back to IndyCar. You've all got Chip Ganassi in common. Before we talk about IndyCar, just tell us a little bit about Chip and what's he like as a team boss, team owner.
Well, I'm the new guy. I've raced against him for so many years in NASCAR, and now to drive for him, I feel like I'm in the family in a sense. It's been a great experience.
And you two have been together at Chip Ganassi for a long time now. What makes Chip special?
Lots of things make Chip special. But no, I think, for me, walking through the door back in 2002, I've been with Chip for over 20 years now, and it was just the sense of competitiveness, and the only way of doing anything in that building was wanting to win, which is, not something you always see, being through a bunch of junior categories and even some IndyCar teams previous to that. That's all that matters, and to have that competitiveness, I think, from the top down changes the whole format for everyone. So for me, it's just the best place you could be possible if you're in racing, because everybody only wants to win. There's no second place, there's no third place. It's just go to the weekend and try and win, and that's the best thing about Chip for me.
Yeah, it's his business. A lot of other team owners have other businesses. Chip, it's racing. That's it. That's what he thinks about. That is his full focus. I mean, at the end of 2008, when I joined Scott at the team, I kind of walked in and we did a deal literally in an hour. It was like, yeah, I want you, right. I was like, okay, that was pretty simple. But I walked in and I started talking to the people and I went, right, I get it. This is why they were so difficult to beat. And that goes through the whole building from the top, from Chip. Mike Hull, our managing director, who's here this weekend too. He wanted to come with his wife Melinda to see the whole thing, and but from them down, it's just about winning.
You've touched on 2008 there. I wanted to talk about that because obviously you made the transition to NASCAR, and Jimmy, you've gone the other way. So we'll talk a little bit about how challenging was it to get a roof over your head and go and race on those ovals. It's completely different discipline.
It was pretty challenging, clearly. The hardest thing wasn't the roof. I mean, I'd driven DTM cars and stuff. The tough part, and we don't really laugh about it because it's quite painful at times, but the difficulty of trying a completely new discipline, the feelings that the car gives you, what it requires to go quickly, everything is different. And again, we've said this so many times, you don't start from zero when you go into a new category like that. You start from minus, and you've got to sort of actually get rid of all these bad habits that have served you so well.
Or good habits.
Yeah,
they're now bad habits in that car.
And so I went through that going that way. Jimmy's gone through the opposite, going the other way.
So talk us through what's been your challenges since coming over to IndyCar, and the car so different in terms of the performance, the braking, the cornering speed, that kind of thing.
I guess the easiest way to put it is the aggression you're able to bring to the IndyCar lap after lap, corner after corner. A Cup car is so big and heavy, the tires are literally falling off the car, the brakes literally fall off the car, and you just have to manage all of that. And in the IndyCar, you actually are rewarded the more aggressive you are with the car and the more you punish it, especially on a shorter run. And trusting that.
I'd almost say yesterday the Galaxy you drove was closer to what you're used to than IndyCar was.
Completely agree. I felt more at home in about 2 laps in the Galaxy than 2 seasons in IndyCar.
It showed in the timesheets too. Bloody impressive. You were straight on it.
But you're at home at the ovals, 3 top 6 finishes now.
Yeah, felt very comfortable. It was nice on the ovals to actually just race and to stop thinking. Still for me on the road circuits and in the new environment that I'm in, I'm thinking about every move that I make with my feet, my hands. Where am I looking? Where does the circuit go? And you're just missing time when you're thinking like that. Put me on an oval, I fall right back into my rhythm. Been just fun.
High speed, not scared of it as well. Watching the Indy 500 coverage this year, the commentators had great fun.
Yeah, it's the Cup cars had plenty of power and plenty of speed. Maybe not that same top speed, but going 220 in a 3,600-pound car, brings a level of fear that got me ready for the IndyCar.
And Scott, you've not decided or made the decision to go across to NASCAR yet. You're not going to copy Dario.
He saw what happened.
He has an announcement to make.
Oh yeah, are we going to announce today?
Yes.
Yeah, Jimmie Johnson is going to start
Exclusive.
a team and run me.
Run Scott Dixon.
yeah. I don't know. It's something that I wanted to try, and I think I tried to do a few tests with Chip, and then I think the last one was meant to be at New Smyrna. And literally a week before, he's like, if you crash that car, you're going to pay for it. And I was like, well, I don't need to do the test. And that was it. So I did a ride swap with Jamie McMurray. I went to Talladega. He got the IndyCar at Alabama, which was at Barber, which was a lot of fun. But
I think he won in that trade-off.
He did, yeah. It was more like me driving around a 2.5
Interstate.
mile oval.
Yeah.
It's not
in a
very
rental
exciting,
car.
is it, on your own?
I haven't got the real feeling yet, but I love, I'm a motor racing enthusiast on any level, and obviously a big fan of Jimmy's too, and watched him through all of his championships. So it's a crazy season in the NASCAR side.
Kyle Busch might be making, or he's talked about trying to do the 500.
Yeah, I know there are many NASCAR drivers that want to experience Indy, and Kyle Busch, his brother Kurt, was the most recent one to do the double, and did it prior to me competing in the race this last year. I know Kyle Larson's very interested. Kyle Busch is very interested, and my phone was quite active in May with NASCAR drivers asking what the experience was like.
I can imagine. So back to 2022, young guns versus the veterans. That's been the theme in IndyCar over the last few years. Dario, you're tasked with looking after everyone. You've got these two. You've got Alex as well in the stable. What's that been like, Scott, in terms of, how have you had to change, if you've changed anything, and what are you focused on now at this stage in your career, and still every bit as good as you've ever been and still progressing?
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting season, lots of ups and downs. I think, if you have a semi-average or a bad result at Indy, it definitely double points, it makes it pretty hard. I think I had a 76-point deficit to Marcus just in the one race, and trying to, pull that back is very tough with, one, how competitive the series is, but how, I guess everybody is good at everything now. So, it's always compromise. I feel like each weekend, it's always about trying to find new things, new ways. The tire changes, the ambient conditions change. So it's never the same thing. And especially with IndyCar, with the different disciplines, it's never the same. So I guess that takes care of itself. But yeah, the competition and the depth of the field now is pretty insane. We had a few instances this year in qualifying where you miss something and you don't even make it out of Q1, and you'll be starting 12th, 13th, 14th back. So it's tough. The racing's fun. It's one of the best categories I think in the world now, as far as not really knowing who's going to win, everybody having a fair chance at it, and a great show. So I still love it, man. I enjoy it. I hope I'm doing it for a while longer.
And what's it like having Dario in your corner now? He's the coach.
Dario is so good at what he does, and his attention to detail. We were teammates, obviously, a few years back, but he's always such a great help. I think for all of us, Jimmie, is seen that I think on maybe more of a scale, just because of the differences that he's had to come in. But everybody's different. It's probably the hard part for Dario is you're dealing with someone like me that's been with the same team for 20 years. Jimmie that's just coming from NASCAR. Alex, who's come from junior formulas, Marcus, that's come from Formula One. So everybody needs something a little bit different, which is probably not that easy.
Before I move the conversation onto Formula One, what's it like willpower 2.0 now. He's literally turned himself off. You wait for him to get out of the car and be emotive and say...
He's not as mental as he was, and he's a lot more difficult to wind up. I made a fairly good job of that for a few years. In fact, we did, because if I wasn't winding him up, it was him.
Yeah, there's definitely some Zen thing. I don't know if he's doing yoga in the mornings or I don't know.
Meditation.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's quite impressive.
It was good to see this year. It was good to see.
Yeah.
Very happy for him.
So McLaren are in the championship now. There's Zach's hoovered up one or two young
this
drivers.
is awkward.
And there's a link to Formula One. You've all driven Formula One cars. IndyCar is obviously incredible. We talked about NASCAR, but Formula One's still very much at the pinnacle of the sport. What was it like to have a little foray as a driver? Did you have one eye on Formula One, or were you totally committed on what you were doing in America?
My first F1 test was 1995, before I'd even gone to IndyCar, which was a lot of fun. And there was an opportunity just when I went to IndyCar in 97 to become the McLaren test driver, but it just didn't seem like it was a good idea. But the car was amazing to drive. And I definitely had one eye on F1. And I drove in 2000. Unfortunately, it was the Jaguar that I drove, which was an absolute bucket of bolts. But it was, even then, it was still an incredible thing to drive. The performance window of a Formula One car is so impressive, and it still is today, maybe even more so today. So it was nice to do something different. It would be interesting to see how life would have turned out had that I'd gone that direction, but I was pretty happy with how it all worked out.
And how close were you with Williams?
It's hard to ever really know. Mine was a interesting situation too. Just won the IndyCar Championship for the first time, and the opportunity sounded great. It looked great. First test, then second test, we knew that the seat was already filled just because of how contracts were moving at the time. So for me to kind of bail on maybe going for another IndyCar Championship and being in a competitive series, it was maybe I'd just be a test driver or something. So Stefan Johansson, who still manages me today, was like, man, I think you've got to stick with IndyCar because you enjoy it. I see you enjoy it. You love it. It's very competitive. But Formula One is Formula One. There's no doubt. That's what I grew up watching fanatically as a kid, and all the drivers through that era as well. So it's one of those things. I definitely wouldn't take back any of the decisions I made. I've had an amazing career in a series I love.
And you tested the McLaren. Have you got Zach's number? Has he called you?
Yeah. Zach was so instrumental in me being able to drive that Formula One car. Fernando and I did a swap, and the experience I had in Bahrain really reminded me of my goal as a teenager, which was to race single-seaters and to be in the IndyCar series. Where I grew up in Southern California, all of my heroes raced IndyCar. My opportunities in life led me to NASCAR. Then we shipped my NASCAR equipment to Bahrain, and I drove the Formula One car. And after that, I was like, I've got to do something similar to this. This is just such a cool experience. And that started this open wheel opportunity for me.
Right, turning our attentions to the Revival. You two are sharing a car. What's that like?
So far,
May I
so
weigh
good.
Oh, there we go.
The conversation around who's going to start is quite fun if you want to ask that question.
Who's
And
going to
why?
start?
I'm starting.
why?
Apparently, Scott.
starting,
So the E-types this year, in the Stirling Moss, they've narrower rear tyres this year, going from 6.5 inch to 6 inch. So they get a bit oversteery as the tyres heat up. Well, yesterday, Captain Excitement here was getting more and more sideways, so he decided it would be a good idea if he had the nice new tyres and brakes and hand me this steaming pile about halfway through the race.
It's definitely an eye-opening experience. You only get 25 minutes practice between the two of you, right? So it's not a whole lot of track time. And I felt everybody was in the race right from the get-go.
I was very kind. I only did 3 laps and gave you the rest.
Absolutely. But to come here for the first time and get out there, it's definitely an experience, but it's so much fun. I think the whole time I'm just like laughing the whole way around because what people are doing outside the car, what I'm doing in the car, it's chaotic, but it's so much fun.
Well, listen, you've been fabulous guests. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best over the coming weekend.
Thanks, Tom.
Appreciate it.
Cheers, man.